So we are back. It is Tuesday, and this is actually our fifth session. Uh, oh, why do I hear myself? Okay, there we go. Can I just mute myself? Yeah, I can. All right, so it's our fifth session in the Work the Web training program. Well, we've had another four sessions because we also have our weekend discussion in terms of the coach-led sessions. This is our fifth one, and it's time for us to dive deeper into version control. Hopefully, guys, you can see my screen, and I am also visible on Twitch. So I assume that some of you guys have worked with version control before. Um, am I correct in that assumption? Mm-hmm. Cool. So some of this will be new to you, some of them will not be new to you, but it is what it is. Let's dive into this and see where we end up. So I do have a few slides for you, of course, as usual. I'm gonna do a little bit of exercises just to showcase some concepts, and then we can start. I think that we should devote a little bit of time after I'm done to talk about the project itself. Oh wow! I just got a bottle of. Wow, that's awesome. There it is. Yeah. Somebody is very nice to me. My wife just came with a bottle of champagne. That's great. So anyway, I think we should devote a little bit of time to talk about the project. I know that the guys have been busy creating quite a few user stories and also adding a few things to ZenHub potentially. So we're going to take a look at that as well. And there will be time, of course, for some Q&As and stuff like that. I hope that then you will that. Yes. I hope that will work for you. All right. So let's see if we can get started. So, introduction to version control using GitHub and Git, and it's important that we make a distinction between what Git is and what GitHub is. And I also misspelled GitHub because it should be spelled with a capital H probably, but we're gonna have to live with that. Sorry about that. Microsoft, the owners of GitHub. But first we're gonna take a look at some CLI commands, and as it happens, I actually already delivered this talk once today to my preparatory course students for the Full Stack Craft Academy Bootcamp. Sometimes the stars are aligned, and I end up doing the same talk twice. That's kind of weird. But these guys were totally new to software development, so for them CLI was an acronym that they didn't understand what it meant. Do you guys know what CLI stands for? Command line interface, of course. It's this text-based way of communicating between us and the computer. And there are many ways to issue commands, of course, and most of us are born and raised in the era of graphical user interfaces, one way or another. So when we browse for files or applications and things like that, we usually use our what is it called, File Explorer or something like that in whether it's Windows or OS X or what have you. But real programmers do it text-based, so we're going to focus a little bit on that. I usually say that if you want to impress on people, you just open up your terminal window and issue some random commands that return a lot of outputs, and then people think you're a great hacker. Of course you're not, you're just doing some nonsense stuff, but people are usually impressed by seeing this monochrome or black and white output. And in Swedish we say that a dear child has many names, and I guess that a terminal could be called a terminal, it could be a shell, it could be called CLI or what have you, but it's basically a text-based interface into your computer. They're called different on Windows, on Linux, and on OS X. But basically, so I have a MacBook, so a lot of these examples are if I show you some screenshots, they are based on a Mac. But the commands that I will be sharing with you could be they are the same on Linux and OS X, and if you use a Git bash or some other stuff that I am not aware of on Windows, you can use the same commands on Windows as well. However, the default command interface on Windows have slightly different commands because it's a different operating system underneath the hood. But anyway, I will focus on Mac and Linux mostly. It looks like this. It's pretty easy. It tells you what time it is, and it has a prompt when you open it. It also has a dollar sign. And the dollar sign doesn't mean much apart from the fact that it is an active prompt. Now, the reason why I'm focusing on that dollar sign is because sometimes when you read documentation, they also when they give you an example of a bash command or a terminal command, they actually include that dollar sign, and you shall of course never type it because it's just an indicator that this is something that is written on the prompt on the command line. So always avoid that dollar sign. Just want to say that just in case you didn't know that. Anyways, now some very basic CLI commands. If you want to know where you are in your terminal, you issue this pwd, and that is, I guess, an abbreviation or a shorthand for path to working directory or work directory or something. If you want to clear the output, so clear your terminal window, you issue the clear command. That's pretty straightforward. But there are a few others that are interesting, and this list here, if you just memorize those things, this will get you through most of the things you can ever imagine to do in your terminal, unless you work with some more advanced stuff. But for basic usage, if you're new to terminal, that this is exactly what you need. ls is a command that shows you the list of files and folders in a current directory. If you want to take a look at on any hidden files, and also see more info about access rights and size of the file, you do ls with a flag. We call these flags when you say dash and then something. That's what we refer to them, flags. So if you do ls al, you show the hidden files and some more info, and alt is pretty much the same thing. It's a slightly different sorting of how they are displayed. You can jump back in and out of folders or directories, and you do that with the cd command. Cd ... takes you one level up, cd, and then the folder name helps you jump into a specific folder. mkdir creates a folder. There are flags you can pass in there recursively or whatever, but it's an overkill if you haven't done this before. Touch is a command that creates an empty file if you pass in a file name, of course. rm removes files, and if you want to remove folders that contains files, you have to pass in a flag to the rm command, which is rf. R stands for recursive and F for force. So rf, the rm to call rm on a folder is considered an unsafe command. So therefore you need to force it. Otherwise, your operating system just says, "Hey, hold your horses, don't do this," because there are stuff in the. Are you really sure that you want to delete them? And again, very quick crash course on command line commands, because I will be using some of them later on in my walkthrough of Git. So, what is version control system? Systems. It should say systems and not system. I want you to consider this, that you are the main character in everything you do, of course, in your life and in your professional endeavors as a software developer or whatever you do in your professional life. And your colleagues are also equally important. But apart from, you know, you as stars, your source code is the most valuable asset in your project. You have to protect your source code always at all costs and make sure that it has a good standing, and you always have the latest version available. And there are many things you can do to keep your source code in good standing. Of course, you want to use good practices. You want to use good naming standards, follow all the best practices that there is. But you also want to make sure that you have the latest version that works available for deployment and for pushing up to live servers, of course, right? And so how can you do that? Now, this is the question or problem that version control systems help us to solve. So, as knowledge workers, whether we are programmers or if we write books or poetry or whatever, or if we are working in finance and document whatever we document, or we create agreements as lawyers or whatever we do, we create and edit documents nowadays, right? That's mainly what the computers are used for, apart from sharing pictures of kittens on Facebook or what we just had for dinner. So we work with documents. We add text. We work with images, files, etc. Right? So a very common workflow for all of us is that we create a file, we save it, we edit it, we save it again, and so on. And as long as we work alone, that works pretty okay. But as soon as we need to share documents with others and work in any way in any collaborative way, we need to send a file to a coworker, a friend, a spouse, or whatever. Let's say that we just wrote our CV and we want them to give us some feedback on it, or proofread stuff or what have you. And that file gets changed in one way or another, saved again, often with a different file name, saying that, CV version or proofread CV by grandma or what have you. And that person sends it back to you over email perhaps, or in any way. You download the file and you have to look through the changes and kind of incorporate them into your own changes if you've made any, and it starts to become tedious. And if it's only grandma or one friend, that's okay. But if you send this file over to, let's say, 3 or 4 people for proofreading, and they all make changes, they all have opinions about stuff, it becomes tedious work to kind of incorporate this all these changes into your final version. So what if we could work a little smarter? Because again, we are not alone, and we have to be able to collaborate with others. But there are also other issues and other questions that could be useful for us to be able to answer. Like, for instance, when was this file modified? What exactly changed in this file? What if it's not only a small CV, but rather a 70-page essay that you wrote and somebody made a lot of corrections and you can't really see the changes? What exactly changed and why was it modified? And after a while, if you've had this thing proofread or worked on by many people, you want to also know who made the change. That would be a good thing, probably. Now, so that's where version control comes into the place, into the workflow. And I really hate this slide. That, guys, makes me so nervous. Challenges when working with code, of course, that we will have different versions. There will be a lot of people working on the same code, and we need to make sure that we keep a secure copy of the code base one way or another. Let's get rid of this. So that is exactly what version control is important, because we can help. It will help us in storing different versions. We can roll things back if we've made bad decisions, or if something has changed along the way when when we coded or when we worked on a feature, we can restore versions. Collaboration is made much easier, and something we refer to as collective code ownership is made possible. I will talk a little bit about that later. We can track the entire history of the project, and there is a lot of security issues built in into version control. So, for instance, by using version control, just as an example, we can make sure that nobody tampers with our code, because everything is built on top of each other. A little bit like blockchain, actually, with hashes, and each commit is dependent on its parent. But I think that's where the comparison stops, actually. So let's just consider the difference between Git and GitHub, unless there are any misunderstanding. Git is the version control system that is most widely spread among developers today. And GitHub is not a version control system. It's a service. It's a cloud-based service that we use to store our repositories in the cloud. GitHub, cloud-based, social network for geeks. Git is the version control system in itself. So when you work with Git, use cases, you can use that for individual development. You can also use it for collaborative development, of course. It is fast. It allows you to work offline with a full history of your project available locally, and it can handle large projects and a lot of files efficiently, which is good. GitHub, it leverages on all the good stuff with Git. It allows us to work on projects in larger teams and teams that are spread around the world. It is also fast. It gives you an ability to store your work online, so you don't have to rely on not spilling cafe latte on your MacBook Pro, as I did a few minutes before I was about to go live in a presentation. But since I had everything stored in the cloud, I was able to get my hands on a Chromebook or some nonsense, and then I was still able to deliver my talk. And GitHub is also suitable for handling large projects and also large files. So GitHub actually makes it possible to do something that Git is usually not so good at, and that is storing large files. So there is a large file storage available in Git, which is a good thing. More on that at some other point, I guess. So just to recap again, sorry about the branding here, but while Git is about keeping track of changes in code, GitHub is about communication, collaboration, and file management and project management, rather. But having said that, I just want to emphasize that Git is not the only version control kid in town. It is one of the younger guys, actually. Git is created by Linus Torvald, which was the creator of Linux, and they were using Mercurial and Subversion, I think, in Linux for the Linux core. And I think Mercurial changed something in terms of licensing, and so Linus thought that it was time for him to develop a version control system on his own, so he created Git. According to a story, Linus has said at some point that he named Linux after himself, Linux, and he chose Git also as himself, because apparently in British slang, Git is a word for an asshole, or like an unpleasant guy, and Linus he's considered not being a very nice person, with a very short temper, so he named Git because of his character. I don't know if it's true, but it is what it is. Actually, but today Git is the most dominant version control system. Things might change later at some point, but as it looks like now, Git has solidified its position as the most widely used version control system. However, I can tell you that I sometimes use Subversion because Subversion has a few a few features that Git does not bring to the table. So there are use cases for Subversion. Uh, right. So there are a few concepts that needs to be internalized by you guys, and I can tell you that if you understand these concepts that are outlined here on the screen, you can get by with like 90% of the things you can ever come up with, or every most of the use cases you can come up with for Git or for version control. So there is this idea of snapshots. A snapshot is basically a record of all files at any given point in time. I will not cover how these snapshots are done. If you're interested in that, I do have a 1-day workshop on the inner workings of Git and how that actually works with deltas and all these kind of things. But today, let's just agree that in certain intervals, Git takes a snapshot of your entire folder and all the files in that folder and subfolders. There is this idea of the concept of making a commit, which is actually you, the developer, triggering that snapshot. You're telling Git to take that snapshot of your files. The concept of a repository is, of course, very crucial to understand. It's the entire collection of all the files and the history of those files. We refer to this as a repo, and it can live on your local machine or your local host or whatever you want to call it, but it can also be stored on a remote server. Equals often, but not always, GitHub, could be Bitbucket, could be whatever. GitLab, for instance. I think these are the three big ones. There is this idea of cloning. When you clone a repository, you basically take it from a remote server and pull it down to your computer. You create all these folders, subfolders, and files locally, and then you work on it and do whatever you can do, and the changes are yours and yours alone until you want to share them again with the community or what have you, or store it in the cloud. And for that, the concept of pulling and pushing comes into play. Pulling is the act of downloading commits that are available on a remote server, but they are not yet available on your local clone of the repository. And pushing is the reverse process, which means that you have local changes and the upstream repo, the repository on a remote server does not have it, so you push it up basically. And then there is finally, just to keep things as simple as possible, there is this idea of branches. All commits are available on a branch. A repository can have many branches, and they can diverge and differ from each other. The main branch is usually called master, but at least, I mean, recently we changed that, or the community agreed to change that, and nowadays the default branch is called main instead, and that has to do with some changes in our cultural views. The word master carries with it some negative, values from historical perspective. So therefore, they chose to move away from that name. So all new repositories in the newest version of Git, I think the default branch is called main and not master anymore. So if you understand these things, and I will go through this a little bit. There are a few other commands that I will be showing you. then you can do most of the things using Git. And I will also show you how to connect your repos between your local host and an upstream repo on GitHub, for instance. Right. Do we have anything else? No. Let's learn how to use this. Okay, good stuff. All right. Right. Does this make sense? And do you guys have any questions yet at this point? You guys all know this. This is like a repetition for you, right? All right. Well, go ahead. Well, you know, um, I can't have any opinions on that, but yes, I would probably prefer to work on branches. But this is an interesting thing. I will cover that a little bit in in this talk. So let me address that in a while. Is that okay, Basilo? All right. Okay. So guys, we can I'm in my terminal. I can do ls. I can see some stuff right in Agile Ventures. Actually, I can, instead of doing that, oh, let's do it here. Actually, I can see that I have a lot of lot of a lot of files and folders, and I can do al, I guess, and I can see more more information about this, all the content of this folder, and I can create a folder here, mkdir, and I can call it git demo, for instance, demo like this, right? And now I can touch another file, and I can call this guy index. No, actually, I'm going to call this readme md, and I can show you another command that I didn't include in my review here. I can do echo, and then I can insert some markdown, hello world, like this, and I can push this into the readme file. I think this should work. So if I open this up in my code editor now, we should see, yeah, sure, I trust you. Right, I made a total fool of myself again because I was in too much of a hurry, so I have to move readme into the git demo. Right, and cd into git demo. Sorry about that. ls readme is there. You can close this guy and code. Open this inside of the git demo. That's where I was supposed to be and nowhere else. Right, so we can see that I have some content in the readme file, right? And let's say that this is my file, whatever, and I add some content to this one, like this. I save it, and there's no way for me to track when this was added or by whom or anything like that, right? So let's say that I want to place this git demo folder under version control. The way we do this is by issuing the git init command. Git init will create a new folder for us that is called .git. So if I do ls-a, I will see now that apart from the readme file, I also have a .git folder. Okay, so we can actually take a peek into this folder, and we can see that there are some stuff in it. And I will not go over what it all does. And again, I have a have a workshop on this, and we can run it at some point, because it's quite interesting for the tech geeks to understand what's going on underneath the hood. But for today, it doesn't really matter. I have a specific bash prompt set up, so it tells me automatically what branch I am on and how many files are either not committed or not staged or what have you. So this bash prompt is a little specific for my setup. If you're interested in having this setup, I can point you to a resource where you can read about it and install it. It is very convenient if you work with version control to quickly access this information. But what we do have is a situation where we can check the status of our Git repository. And if I issue this command git status, Git is telling us that we are on the main branch, there are no commits, and that there is one untracked file that is called readme.md. This file is not tracked by Git. Git knows about its existence, but it doesn't track it yet. In order to start tracking the changes in this file, we would have to say git add and then readme.md. And then we will now see that if we check the status again with git status, we are still on the main branch, we have still no commits, but we do have a new file under version control called readme.md. So now we are tracking this, but we haven't yet made a snapshot of this repository in any way. We have created one repo, we have added a file to version control, but we still haven't started to track that guy, or we still haven't made a snapshot. And so you remember I said that snapshots are made when you create a commit. So let's do that. We can do git commit, and for convenience, we can pass in at least one flag here, and that would be the M flag, which allows us to add a message directly to our commit. And everyone has their own style. My style, when I do commit messages, I pay a lot of attention to them because they are very crucial in tracking the history or reviewing the history of a project. So I try to write as descriptive commit messages as possible, and I write them in this format. I add them. The message kind of tells what the commit does. So in this case, I would say adds readme to project, like this, and that would be enough in this case. Adds readme to project. Okay, so now we hit enter on this git commit, and we're getting a lot of information back. And you should get into the habit of actually reading the output of what your terminal commands throw back at you. I know that it takes a while for all beginners to get into this habit, but this information is actually very crucial. Not when things go well, but they are really important when things go south. And the only way for you to know this is to read them through. In this case, everything went well. We are getting some info. We just created something called a root commit, which is the first commit of a project. It's a little special one. We are getting a number here. In this case, 3D, a number or a hash rather, 3D23B21, and we also received back the message that we wrote. One file changed, 3 insertions. So it also tells us that he knows what we did here. We changed one file, there are 3 insertions, line 1, hello world, line 2, a line break, and then line 3, some more content. Okay. All right, so let's see if we can do, yeah, I can show you this also. We can always check the history of our repository by issuing the git log command. And there are 2 versions. One that is just git log like this. It is quite verbose. It gives you both the long hash. This was a truncated version of it. A long hash. It tells us who the author was, and it also gives us a specific date when this commit was made. And remember, I was talking about that in my slides. That's um, a good piece of information to know sometimes. And then it gives us back the commit message. Another version of this is to pass in the flag one line. It's a little more truncated, shorter information, so often enough to know what's going on. All right, let's add some more stuff here. So now I've made another change in this README file. So if I now check git status, I can see that README MD has been modified. I actually made a few changes. Let's say that I change my mind. Oh, no, I don't want this anymore. So I can get rid of this. Instead of deleting that, I can do git stash. It's a command that I didn't have in my walkthrough, but still a really interesting one. And as you can clearly see, whatever I wrote in my hello world disappeared. It's not there anymore. And then I go like, shit, I shouldn't have removed that. I should have it still. Then I can do git stash pop, and it comes back like magic. All right, that's great. So now we know that you can stash and pop um, information. And of course, it doesn't really matter if if you change one line, but if you think about it, if you have a large project, you do a lot of changes in many files. This stashing business can be very powerful, and this stash pop could be even better. It can save your life, actually. All right, so let's see if we can now do git status again. We have this README modified. I can do git commit, pass in another flag. And this is something I do out of old habit. I always pass in the AM. A stands for commit all amended files, and M stands for the message that we already covered. So this is a quick fix to make sure that you always include all the amended files in your version control. That's the best way to do this, actually. Carl, you raise your hand. Go ahead. Carl? No? So perhaps Carl didn't want to say anything. You guys can hear me properly, right? Or is there something wrong with my sound? Working fine. Okay, good. All right. So now I can see adds more content to README. Right. Something like this. Okay. And so now if I do git status, we can see that nothing is supposed to be committed now because I haven't made any changes. I am right after a specific a commit. If I do git log one line, I can see that I have 2 commits now. Okay, so let's talk about branches, Tassilo. I'm gonna address that at this point. So branches allows me to break out from the main branch and work on a specific feature, for instance, see if it works, run it in either run my tests or deploy that feature branch into a specific staging server, click around or what have you, and then make a decision whether I want it to be part of my main code or not, right? And there are multiple ways to create branches and work with branches, and I will show you the textbook version and then my preferred version of this, right? So you check, first of all, you check what branches you have by issuing git branch command. And here we can see that we only have one branch. We only have the main branch at this point. So we can create one by saying git branch and then say new branch, for instance. You can give it whatever name you want, but the name cannot contain any spaces or anything like that. So in my case, I usually use snake case. So snake case is the casing where you separate words with an underscore. So let's just create that. And now if we take a look at our branches, we can see that there are two branches. We have the main branch and the new branch, but we are still on the main branch. Okay, so if we want to switch over to the new branch, we would have to do git checkout new branch like this. And now you can see in my prompt that I am on the new branch. All right. So let's say that I add some branch specific content here, right? And so again, if we go over this process, git status, we see that readme has been modified. We can do git commit. Again, am adds even more content to readme content, and we misspelled content, which I usually do. No, I didn't misspell it. Oh, that was okay. Okay, sorry about that. Right, and so now if we do git log one line, we can see now that we have 3 commits on this one, right? The first one that we created on the main branch, and the second one also on the main branch. And then we have something called a head, which is like the top of the spear, and so on. That is present here on this particular log. But here comes the thing now, that if I now check out main again and do git log one line, here we can only see 2 commits. And for those of you who are awake still, you can see that the content I added on the new branch is gone. Okay, so we have a situation where the new branch is 1 commit ahead of our main branch. There is content in this particular file that is not present on the main branch. And if you want to incorporate this into those changes into your main branch, you have to use a concept that we call merging. So you have to merge this code into whatever branch you are on. And you do that very simply by saying git merge new branch. And lo and behold, we have the content back on. And if we do git log one line, we can see that we have now merged this new branch into main, and that is present here. So that's one way of doing this. There is a faster way of creating a branch and checking it out, because as you remember, I had to create the branch first and then do a checkout into that branch. It's better, or it works faster if you do git checkout -b, you pass in this flag and you call it another branch, for instance, right? So that will automatically create and check out a new branch. So checkout -b, another branch, works perfectly well. There are many flags that you can pass into the checkout command. For instance, there is another fantastic flag called T, and that will allow you to check out a branch from a totally remote repository, not even your own local host. But if you have let's say that me and Shima works on a project together, and I know that he has forked and cloned this project, I can add him as another remote. I will be talking about remotes in a second, and I can check out things from his GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket repository automatically. So that's a neat little solution. Now there is another thing. I've been jumping back and forward between different different branches. I created 2 branches and so on. I am on another branch at this point, but from time to time you end up in a situation where you want to know exactly what you've done, not only in terms of commits, but also between some what actions you have performed. And so there's another type of log that you can use that is called a reference log. So you access that by issuing this command, git reflog, and then you can see a lot of things that you've done locally on your computer, not what anybody else has done on their forks or remotes, but what you've done in your own on your own local host. So you can see that we can we can track that not only did I create a lot of commits, but if you look at this particular line that I try to highlight, the BA71 hashed action, that is actually the action of me moving from new branch to main again, right? And this one is about moving from main to new branch. It happens to have the same commit like this one, so it might be a redundant thing, but by using reflog you can access the total history of all actions, which also means that if you can access the history, you can roll back to a specific action. You can always undo things. So that is a bit over your pay grade if you're not proficient with Git already, but it's a very good things to know because you can fix up any problems or any errors that you've had done before. So that's an interesting one. Anyway, let me show you very simply how you can connect things to your repository. So if you go to GitHub and your own, let's go to Tochman, that's me. If you go over here to your GitHub account and to your repositories, and we can create a new one, and I can call this one work the web git demo, for instance, like this. And I can make this into a public repo. Don't add anything like this. Just create this repository as it stands, like this. And I will be given this view. I will be seeing this view, and I will be given this URL. And I can copy this URL in HTTPS, and I know that you can choose between HTTPS and SSH, but I prefer to do it. If you have your SSH keys set up on GitHub, you can do it with HTTPS as well, because it's I think it's the preferred way to do it nowadays. So just copy this URL, and let's connect my local repo to this remote repository on GitHub, and we do it simply by saying git remote add, and by default, by convention, we call this origin, and then just pass in this URL like this. And now if I do git remote -v, which is the most verbose way of doing this, you can see that you have both fetch and push rights, or pull and push rights to this repository. So let's just check out. I can check out the main branch again. Sorry. And now I can. You remember I told you about the push and pull, right? So now we can do git push origin. So we tell what remote we want to push to, and then we just say what branch we want to push, and I do that. there's some info displayed. We are communicating with GitHub over the HTTP protocol, and if I reload this page now, we can see that I have my README file displayed here. And here I can see a lot of information and a lot of history in a more accessible way, perhaps than on this in the CLI, but still it's cooler with the CLI. I can see the 3 commits that I just did. I can browse what changes have been introduced in each commit. I can do a lot of things on this one. But what I just pushed up was the main branch. You guys know that I have two other branches on my local machine, but they have not been pushed up to my GitHub repository, of course, because that was not what I did. If I want to push up the new branch for some reason, I can do it from anywhere. I can be here on the main branch. I can just do git push origin and then new branch like this, if I want to do that for some reason. So there we go. And now we can see that, well, I have to reload, sorry. We can see that we have more branches here. I have both the main branch and the new branch available to me here. Let's focus a little bit on the another branch. So we're going to check that out. Git check out another branch, and here I will touch. Oh well, actually I can echo more some content even if it's just nonsense, I can still avoid typos. And here I want to create another file .md. Right, so now we will see that we have another file. Why did that? Right. And now I will do git status, and I will git add this file, git commit am adds a new file to project like this. And now I want to go into the README, and I want to do, now I keep on adding stuff here. Right, okay. So, and now we'll do git commit am more content in readme. Okay, so a lot of stuff here, but if I now do git log one line, we have 2 commits that we created on this particular branch. Adds a new file to project, and then more content in readme. Okay, so if we take a look at this, let's just move this out of the way, a little smaller. Okay, so if I now check out main, you see that the file, another file disappeared. You see that? It's no longer there, and we can do git check out another branch, and it reappears. And not only did we change the content of readme, but we also added another file, md. Okay, so the snapshot on another branch includes the another file, but it does not include that on the main branch, right? So this one is deleted simply. So let's say that we are like, shit, you know what? This another file is not interesting for us in the main branch. We only want to keep the changes that that has been imposed on in the README file. The only thing I want to keep is the now I keep on adding stuff here. I don't want this another file for anything. So what can we do on this one? So if we do git log one line, we can see that the B54 CA commit is the one that adds a new file, and we can probably take a look at what it did by saying git diff. This, I think so, at least. Right. Git diff. Let's add some more stuff. Add some branch specific content. Right. Right. That's not what I wanted actually. So that's not it. I want to see only the difference between, let's see, git diff, and then do I do this? Let's see. Is that how you do it? Right. No, not really. That doesn't make sense. Forget about that then. Let's say this. Let's play it like this instead. The only commit that I want on my main branch is this one, not the one where I create a new file. You see, this one is called 739 CB09. Okay, that's on another branch. If I check out the main branch, it's we don't have that, and I want to skip one commit. I only want to merge the content of this the last one. So I can't use the git merge command because that will bring both the commits over to my branch, and that's where this fantastic command that is called cherry pick comes in. So we issue this. So you say git cherry pick, and then you just tell Git what commit you want to include, and that would be the 739 CB and so on and so on. And so if I hit enter now, we can see that the additions of that commit are made available on my main branch, but the another file is omitted. And if I do git log one line now, we can see that we have this commit that is called more content in README, as we had on this branch. But for those of you who are observant enough, you can see that the hash is different. Here it was 739, now it's 61DA, for instance, right? And why is that? And that's the security issue here in Git. Every commit has a parent commit. The root commit, the first one, has a specific value because it's parentless. It's the root. It's the first one that we create in the life cycle of a Git repository. But then after that, every commit is bound to another in the snapshot in the tree of commits. And if we do a cherry pick, where we extract a commit from its history, from its parents, it is automatically given a new hash, and the parent here is no longer B54 but rather the 97A. And in that way we can always make sure that these changes have been made by somebody with access rights and in good standing, with good intent, and that is just a small example of the security issues that comes into play when doing this kind of things. I wonder if my camera is working. Perhaps it is. I don't know. That's how this kind of works. And let's see. Did I cover what I was supposed to cover? I did show you how to create folders and add README files, for instance, create a repository locally, initialize a repo on your local host, how we do use some very basic Git commands. I showed you most of the stuff that we outlined here with with snapshots, commits, with the repo, cloned this. Well, perhaps I didn't show you cloning yet. Should probably do that. We did push, and I covered branches. I did cover reflog and log, and cherry picking, which wasn't involved or mentioned in this key concept slide, but hopefully it taught you at least something. Cherry picking is quite powerful. It saved my ass on several occasions, so it can probably save yours as well. So that's what I had for you now in terms of the overview. Now let's address this. Let me show you a small, well, not small. Let me show you a project, what it can potentially look like. And if we look at this 7-year-old project called Website 1, you can see that in this case in this project we have 5,077 commits. It's been running for 7 years or 6 years, something like that. So we can browse through all the commits, and whoever made them, we can take a closer look at the additions and the changes of every commit in history. And again, we could definitely go back really seven years back in time. We don't want to do that, but you can do that. This one was an empty one. Right. You can see exactly what has happened. Nick, here in this case, Nick actually used something that I didn't show you, and that is a multi-line commit message. He's a very patient guy, much more patient than I am. So he writes very extensive commit messages, which I appreciate a lot because it helps me in my code review when we look at his submissions and so on. So all this work that we did, that you can see here, this work was done on a specific branch, and then from that branch we created a pull request, and that was a massive PR, massive pull request. I'm going to show you that one. It's somewhere here, perhaps on the fourth one, or was it on the second one? Yeah, it's this one. Right. So me, Richard, Mike, and Nick worked on a pull request on a specific branch that was called Rails 6 update, and then after 23 days of work, we submitted a pull request to the develop branch. So in this case, the main branch of this project is not called main or master. It is called develop. We use the other branch names for other purposes, but when we develop on a feature branch, as this one was called, we submitted a PR to the develop branch. The PR was reviewed by Mike, for instance, and some other. I think Mike actually wrote something here. Thank you. Well, thank you for thanking me. And then it was consequently merged into the main development branch that we use, right? So the sorry, the flow that we use in this project and in many other projects is that we select one branch that holds the production ready code. Again, this one uses develop, and then every developer, when they work on a specific feature, they branch off from that development branch or develop branch. And one error that people often do is that, let's say that they branch off from the development, they work a little bit on that branch that they branched off from, and then they feel that, oh, but I need to branch off again from the feature branch and then work on some other stuff, because they think that I need those changes. And that is the biggest error you can make, because you should only branch off from the main branch when you work on something. Otherwise, you will get into something called merge conflicts, and all hell breaks loose after a while. And that is a huge, huge problem. So, Tassilo, I don't know what flow you guys used, but I would say that that working with feature branches, like side branches where you do some specific development, is the prudent thing to do to keep the main branch free from any development code that is not thoroughly tested, whether it's manual tests or automated tests. Does that make sense? You should not have done that. And actually, just because we do have a few minutes, and I can show you this. Try to keep up, people, because look, if I now let's clear this up, right? I'm gonna simulate a shit show, things that could go wrong. So let's say that we git check out new branch, right? The one that we have here, and there are many things that can go wrong here. So I'm on the new branch, and this branch is way behind main branch now, because this one only has 3 commits, right? So let's say I add something to line 9. This is added on an old branch, okay? And I just can say new branch. It's called new branch, but it was an old one. Okay, so now I do git commit am adds more text that will lead to merge conflict. Right, and now I will switch over to git check out main, and now let's say that I want to merge this. You see, I did make changes on line 9 on the new branch. So if I would now say git merge new branch, we will get into all sorts of troubles, because A, it was behind my my main branch, and B, I edited the same line in the README as I did that is already edited in this one. So if I do this now, we get a conflict, merge conflict in README MD. It says right here, and it says that automatic merge failed. Fix those conflicts and then commit the result. And you can see that the status of my Git repository is in a bad state. We are merging, so the automatic merge was halted. We can't continue because we have these merge conflicts. We have a situation where the same line of code was edited on both of them. Now, fortunately, in VS Code, we can work with this in a fairly nice way. Now, you get these you get inserted these messages that this is the head of the spear, or I mean the main branch, and this is an incoming change from the new branch, and you get to select that you can either accept the current change or the incoming change or both changes. So you're free to make a choice here. And you can also always Z out of this. So if I click on accept both changes, both of them are being stored. If I do Command Z, this comes back. I can accept the incoming change, or I can accept the current change. So this is the thing. So if I accept the current change, for instance, and do git status, I can see that we have a different or a new message from Git saying that both modified. We are in in merging status, and both branches modifies readme md, right? And now I can finish the commit, or the merging and the merge commit. So I need to say git commit am merges new branch and fixes merge conflicts, for instance, like this. And what I did now was a multi-line commit. I just hit enter without adding the quote, the double quote, and I can do a multi-line commit like this. So if you want to be as thorough as Nick is, and he's a great developer, much better than me, you can you can really describe what you did on every commit. So that was a very small example of a merge conflict. Of course, when you work with plenty of files, big project, lot of code, and you end up in a situation where two developers unknowingly edit the same file, you get this kind of situation. So it is always good to try to stay away from files that are not really relevant for the scope that you are currently working on, just to avoid any conflicts. So by staying in scope, sticking to the user story, and working on the things that you set out to do, is the best course of action. But having said that, Silo, I'm going to tell you that it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to get into using Git extensively, and use its full potential. As every developer, you will get into a shit show, and you will get into trouble one way or another. It's inevitable. But the thing is that by knowing certain things, you can avoid having to do a lot of rewrites of your code. Carmen, see you next time. Thank you very much. So yeah, any other questions? Did you guys learn anything today? Gotcha. I think that most people are used to, grabbing a repository directly from GitHub and cloning it down, which is one way of doing this, and I think it's the most common one when you learn Git. But historically, this is, I mean, well, it depends of how you look at things, but you can do it from both ways, and I think it's valuable to know about both these methods. Pedro? Oh, forking is something that you do on a remote. Yeah, that's the only. That's so that's a two. It's a completely different thing. Like when you fork, uh, you create your own version of the repository on a remote service. Basically, you usually don't use forking on your local host on any. I mean, there's no use case for that, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That yeah, I totally see that, and that is not mutually exclusive. It's like, for instance, if we take up this website one project, right? if you look at forks, it has 247 forks. So 247 people has forked it, and quite a few of them has actually created, because when you fork the branches that are on the main version. Like the Agile Ventures slash website one is the main repository, that what we sometimes refer to as a golden repo. That is the center of the universe. Everybody else that forks, they create their own versions, but any changes that they make and push up to their origins, they stay local. I mean private, right, on their forks. If they want to integrate some code to the main repository, then they need to create a PR, a pull request to that repo. So fork first. Check out take a look at the develop branch in this case, or the main branch of the repository. Then branch off to your feature branch. Work on your stuff, implement your code, write your test, do everything you need to do. Then push up to your own origin, which is your fork, and then from that fork you create a PR to the golden repo, to the main repository. That's a very good question. Access rights. No, you don't want to give all these developers access rights to your main repository for writing things. It's as soon as the repository is an open one, a public one, they can always fork it, but they can't write to it. Do you understand? So that's one thing. So security is one thing, but also, in my opinion, it's about keeping the golden repo as clean as possible. Now imagine if all these people would work against the main repo and create their own branches and all of that stuff, then you will end up with a lot of branches and a lot of code that is not really relevant for the main repository. Unfortunately, I can tell you and that in this particular project, historically, I was the one who created this once again 7 years ago. Then some other people took over, and they did exactly what you kind of asked about, because they allowed people to create repos on this main repository. For instance, they gave Dependabot access rights. But before I cleaned this up, and I did clean this up just a week ago, I had like 200 different branches on this particular version of the code, which again should be the center. And that is just bad practice in my opinion, because it makes my job as reviewer and maintainer of this repository much harder. So you could do it the way you imply. It's not really a bad practice in any way, but over time, if this project grows a bit, it becomes much harder to maintain. The follow-up question that should come now is, okay, Thomas, but what if I want to collaborate with other people, right? Shouldn't I be given access rights, write rights to the main repository, or doesn't it make it harder for me to collaborate with other developers if I have everything on my private fork? And the answer to that question, because great question by the way, thank you, it's is that it's not a problem. You just share those access rights with those developers on your version of the repository. It's much cleaner and much easier to do that than anything else. So, but again, this is just one way of doing this. I think it's the cleanest way to do that. Again, I told you I have strong opinions about a lot of stuff, and this is one of them. As clean as possible. Main repo, whatever happens on the forks is up to each developer. They can do whatever they want. If they don't even want to show me that code or submit a PR, then they don't have to do that. It's perfectly fine. It depends a little bit on Tassilo, of course, but what I would suggest is that we either take his repository and treat that one as the main repo, or we move it over to Agile Ventures, the organization, and create a main repository there, and then that everyone would fork and then work on branches on their forks and so on. That is the cleanest way. Yeah, that's what I would do. And I think we have one. Let me see a situation like this. If we do SHF, let's see. Right, so we have a project that uses Agile Ventures SHF as the main repo, but it was actually originally created on one of our members' accounts. So you can see that it has been forked from this particular repository, right? And this one has since not been abandoned, but yeah, actually it has. You see, she's only on 6 commits, right? Whereas our version of the project is on 971 commits, right? So it has diverged heavily since then, and so on. So it depends a little bit on how Tassilo wants to treat this. Yep, yep, yep. And usually what you do, and we do that on the website one project, for instance, even though this is a community project and it's open sourced, and everybody can access the code, but only certain people have merge rights. So, for instance, Shima created a pull request on this one the other day, um, and I can review it now, which I haven't done yet. So it's not really up for merging. But since I am the project maintainer, I can actually merge this pull request. Well, there are some conflicts on this one at the moment, but it doesn't matter. But and I think Mike can do it, and a few other members of Agile Ventures can actually merge. Everybody else can just review that. They can look at the pull request, but they don't have merging rights. Mm, no problemos. Right, and by the way, Shima, I'm gonna have to take a look at this. I'm sorry about not doing this yet. My backlog is suffering. Tassilo, go ahead. Okay, cool. No problems. We'll fix that. Um, you know, it 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 is what it is in terms of the history. We try to work as how should I say, as clean as possible, the lowest hanging fruit. They keep it as simple as possible and just get the most value out of this. And sometimes I've read quite a few books about Git and different types of Git flow, uh, suggestions, and people are overdoing it a lot. Um, and just overcomplicated stuff, complicating stuff. It is complicated as it is, right? With all the commands and all the commits and all the stuff. Why would we want to make it overly hard for us? I think it's not very smart. So yeah, we will figure it out one way or another. Any other takeaways, Mike? Did I miss anything in the flow? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Right, right. So that's a React specific question. I would say that first of all, um, yes. So first of all, let's just be honest. Merge conflicts are inevitable. You will get them, right? So, and we shouldn't be afraid of them. We should just make sure that if we can avoid them, and when they show up, don't panic. Just fix them, right? Everything is fixable in version control. That is the beauty of the whole thing. Now, in terms of dealing with CSS in React, I would say that working with styles inside of components are the most React-ish thing to do, because React is all about bundling logic, presentation layer, and styling into one single component. So I would try to keep as much of the CSSing inside of the components. Uh, but then if you don't do that, I would work with SCSS or SAS and split that into smaller files. So I would avoid having one large CSS file, or it's better to work with smaller ones and try to keep them um, um, bound to name them the way that, so they are bound to a specific part of the application, right? And then at runtime they are all put together into one CSS and compiled and sent off to the client, to the browser. So there are different ways of dealing with this, I would say, but which one is best? You know, the best way is the way that works for the team, right? If everybody is on board, that is the best solution. The worst thing is to mix several styles. I would say that one developer does it one way and another one does it slightly different, and you end up in a shit show because people are not following each other's conventions, right? Which is exactly why website one is a problem child today, because here a lot of developers were free to do what they want, and we have a code base um, with a very diverse coding, with a lot of different coding styles, that makes it very hard to maintain. So that's a problem. Um, but this is a very tough discussion to have. A, it's very opinionated, and B, it all depends on the level of the developers. Let's say that we choose to work with SCSS, or with SAS, and people don't know what it is. They don't know how to use preprocessors for CSS, and it is a very clean way and it's a very efficient way to work with CSS. But unless the team knows how to use it, then it will just be a shit show too. So it's hard to make a choice, or recommend something. I don't know if I am making any sense, but that's what I would say about this. Thanks. Pedro, you're getting ready to say something. Exactly. Exactly. And discipline is important, right? If we choose, like this very thing, like if we choose to have semicolons at the end of each line, then we should have semicolons. If we use, two tabs versus spaces, then we should stick to that. And I don't have any preferences. I don't give a shit whether we use two tabs or spaces, as long as we make a decision on that, because it's important. One thing that I really hate is to jump into a file that is unformatted, or that uses a different standard. I think that consistency is the key to everything. Um, right. Okay. I kind of emptied my topic. I can go on and do gitting, as I said at some point. I think Castro heard me say that, forever, because it's quite fun. I enjoy it. There are tons of commands that we can use and learn. For instance, the git bisect command is a fantastic one that allows us to hunt for bugs in in our code base. But that calls for a totally different workshop. Uh, dash p. What does the p flag do for us? No, I don't have any changes here. Let me see that. Okay, let me see that. Perhaps I can learn something. More additions, and then let's create a new file. New. Okay, so let's just do git add everything, and then git ciam adds index html. Right, so now if I do some changes here, like h1 hello, hello, and I change something here, another line of text. Okay, so you mean that if I now do git add p, right? Okay, so okay, yeah. So I want to add this one, and I don't want to add this one. All right. So if I do git status now, okay, so it added this, and this one is staged, but this one is still not added. Okay, interesting. I've seen this done like ages ago. Never, I don't use that at all. But that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, 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 yeah. And again, so I would say that discipline is always important. I know that sometimes I code, and then the phone rings, and I answer the phone, or I get a Facebook notification. I just go, oh, got to check who liked my stuff on Facebook. A few minutes passes, and then you go back to your code, and you don't remember, did I commit or did I not? You do git log, no, I did not. And then you're supposed to do a commit, and you want to write a message, and you go like, oh shit, what did I change in this commit? And you don't remember. And so then git diff, this kind of commands to add this by choosing each file would be good, because then you get a reminder of what you did. But the best way to do it is just to not check your Facebook at all times, and just commit when the memory is fresh of what you actually did. I would say that's the best solution to these things. Right. Right. So I saw that somebody, so Starship, Raisin, you shared this one. What are we talking about here? Hmm. Cool. 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 I like it. I like it. I like it. And it also gives you autocomplete, like a preview of the autocomplete. I see. Okay. Okay. Well, you know how it is. They should. But this one is good. This one is really good. That's even better. That's Yeah, yeah. And there was another resource, learn git branching js.org. What is that? Let's have a look. Hmm. Okay. 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 Oh, so they introduced rebase on stage four. That's ambitious. So rebasing is the cause of many developers, uh, you know, getting gray hair. And right. So I was actually teaching a class for a company like a year and a half, 2 years ago, about Git, some advanced Git things, and the one thing that the project manager asked me not to cover is rebasing. He said, whatever you do, don't show them rebase, even if they ask. And I was like, why not? And he told me a story where somebody was rebasing and shit went south, and for some damn reason, this massive merge conflicted code without fixes made it into production. With those arrows and stuff like that, and it cost them like half a day of production time. So he said like no rebasing. So rebasing is tough, huh? Yeah, 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 yeah. I use rebase sometimes, but it's not really necessary to be honest. But this looks like a nice, you know, nice thing. Um, Looks a bit complicated, but I guess that it's good. Cool. All right, I will not go over this. What else do you want to talk about today, people? We have a few more minutes, like 13. I should keep it to an hour and a half, or should I? Or am I already? Yeah, let's talk about that. So, Tassilo, you and Crusader, you sent over this fantastic Excel sheet with a lot of user stories, kind of added to the whole thing. Uh, you want to talk us through that a little bit? Oh, okay, okay. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay. Right, right, right. No, no, no. We can chat, and even if I need to drop out because I have a board meeting with the Agile Ventures board in 8. Sorry, but you guys can continue to this discussion. Now, what I see, I have a few questions. Right, you had the scalability. That's what we're discussing now, right? The scalability issues. Um, right. This one is always hard. We need to we need to probably take a look at the architecture itself. Where the database is stored and the scale of the database, and how much it's basically a matter of money at the end of the day nowadays. It's not even it could be, and sometimes it is, well, actually quite often it is a performance issue in terms of how the application has been coded, how well structured the queries are, and how many network calls and database calls we make. But the easiest way to scale is to scale horizontally. You just spin up new database servers, and that's usually again a matter of money. It's not much money, but it is actually the cheapest way to do things, the fastest and cheapest way to do things. But it is a architectural issue that needs to be addressed, whether Firebase is actually the best solution, or if the code can be optimized and so on, right? You will never get from so if you are working with a distributed application, whether so where you have your data in one place and your clients are consuming that data using network calls, API calls, there will always be some downtime. The bottleneck in all applications are the network calls. And if we pursue this idea of implementing blockchain technology, I can tell you from what I know, and again, I don't know much about blockchain, but those this waiting time will be actually prolonged. It is a great technology, but it's not that very fast. Usually, to access things that are on the net, on the main net, or whatever architecture we will use, actually takes time. So this could be a bit of a problem as well. Um, so what I'm trying to say is that I would not pick this as the first thing we look at in terms of improving performance and so on, but it needs to be addressed fairly fast because uh, it can impact a lot of other decisions later on, um, if that makes sense. It does, kinda. Good. Um, but yes, if you want to scale this to other cities, then you have to ask yourself: should I keep everything in one database, or should I just spin up new instances? I think that's what Pedro meant, right? To spin up new instances of the app itself. There is, of course, you know, there are pros and cons with both solutions, I would say. Um, but um, you did create a few kind of like epic kind of things, right? Didn't you? Well, at least in this, I like this division here: scalability, reliability, and impact, work environment. Did you try to group them kind of in ZenHub in this? Yeah. Okay. That's great. Okay. I'm totally new to this one, so I don't see the epics here. Why don't I see the epics? Oh, there it is. The blue ones. Uh, right. Again, I'm totally new to this. Oh, there. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there. Okay, so you have an epic, and then you see this performance loading time. Okay, now I see it. Okay, cool. Um, all right. So what I would suggest is that everyone kind of go through these stories and epics like on their own, or try to pair up a little bit. So, try to create a Google Meet or whatever is your favorite online meeting platform. Post a link in the channel and say, I will be reading through the current stories on ZenHub, and try to do it together. Like Anya, you could, if you want to devote a little bit of time to that tomorrow in your stream, for instance, you could do that just to try to gain a little bit of more understanding of each story. Don't bite off too much. Focus on two, three, four. If you have questions, you can write comments here. I don't understand this. I don't understand that, or I suggest this, and then so on. Right. So that would be the first thing. Tassilo, you, Christian, and I, and then Crusader, perhaps, of course, Crusader, because he's the product owner here, should set up a time. Um, let's give it 45 minutes or 60 minutes tomorrow or the day after, and look at the code that is already existing. Right? We do it offline or off stream, so we keep any secrets out of the way, and make a decision, if or when we can move this over to Agile Ventures repository, so that we don't expose any of your stuff. Again, this relates back to the talk we had about version control, a very very basic concept, and I do understand that most of you know this, but when we version control and open source uh, code, that is what we open source. We never open source data. I mean, you can't even open source a database. Do you understand? Like, it's not possible. What you could open source is the credentials to access the database, but then Firebase would shut you down probably. So there is, like, when we talk about open software, free software, open source software, whatever, we only talk about the code. We never talk about the data itself. Do you understand? So that's a different. I would say yes. It's both impractical, illegal, and also impossible in many cases, because, and you know me, Anya, I constantly share my credentials online, and I constantly get a snap on my fingers from various providers like Amazon Web Services or GitHub or whatever. These guys are extremely good at constantly scanning the net for credentials, and they are actually as good as the hackers that want to get their hands on the credentials. And last time I did it, it was like 2 minutes, and I got an email saying, "Hey, you shared your yada yada API keys again," or whatever. So I know that it's pretty almost impossible to fuck up nowadays, which is good, um, because back in the days it wasn't that impossible, and I actually made a real fool of myself. Yes. So the data will always stay the same. It will only be bound to the production servers and the production database, so you don't have to worry about that part. But we need to make sure that the credentials to access that data is also secure. and for that we need to be careful. So anyway, I don't know what should they look like tomorrow. I can probably um, free up like an hour or something tomorrow during the day, but Thursday or Friday is actually better for me, or this weekend. I don't know, Cecilia, what you say. Yeah. So let's just coordinate in Slack where we can set that up. Okay. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna have to drop out. We are on 2 hours, so you know what we say: 2 hours stops. I hope you enjoyed this talk. I hope you learned something about version control today, and good progress on the backlog and on ZHub here. Keep on working on this and keep the discussion going in the in Slack. Okay, go ahead. You're breaking up a lot, Shima. Yeah, could we do that tomorrow? During the day at some point. I don't know. I think your sound is breaking up a little bit. Yeah. I think that Shima wants to do a code review on that website 1PR, and so he's asking if I have time to do that, and I would probably say that someday tomorrow we can work on that. Uh, yeah, yeah. You send me a message. That would be great. Okay, boys and girls, or boys and girl. Uh, I talk to you Thursday, right? Unless we keep it asynchronous on Slack. And Twitch, thank you very much for following. YouTube, thank you.